I've only been with Bitcoin since about 2013, 2012, 2013, somewhere along in there. When I first got involved in Bitcoin, my son and I were just Bitcoin miners. And as we began mining some of the coins, and he would sell some of them, he finally realized that he could actually make just as much money or more by just buying and selling rather than mining. So we kind of got out of the mining business, and in about 2013 we got into where we were just doing sales, Essentially the way it worked is we would buy Bitcoins from either an individual or from one of the large Bitcoin exchanges that exist in the United States. And we'd sell to whoever wanted to buy them, And that went on for a few years until we got a knock on the door when the feds showed up and said, "Hey, what's going on?" They started asking a lot of questions. And shortly after that, an indictment came where we were accused of all kinds of things, and then we ended up in court.
Prior to the knock on the door, you had taken steps that you thought were successful in an effort to stay legitimate.
Yeah, I believe it was June of 2013. The exchange that we were buying our Bitcoins from notified us that because of the volume of Bitcoins that we were buying from them, that we would have to be registered with FinCEN. That's a division of the Treasury Department. I think FinCEN stands for Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, is what that stands for. Anyway, they told us we needed to register with FinCEN, or register our business with FinCEN, and that if our state required a license as a money service business, we would need to get that as well. So at that time, I looked up the state statutes regarding money service businesses, and I read through it a few times and realized that at the state level, what we were doing was completely legal, that no license was required, and the reason it wasn't required is because we were simply buying and selling Bitcoins, which is not currency under state law. For it to be a currency, it has to be issued or generated from a state or a government of some type. Like Federal Reserve notes or issued by the Treasury Department. Because Bitcoin is not issued in that way, it's not considered a currency. So therefore we didn't need a license. Anyway, I looked at the registration issue and I said, well, okay, if that's what I have to do, I'll do that. It's a rather long process, but it's all done on computer. You just give them lots of information about your business, what you're doing. Even though I tried to register with FinCEN back in in June of 2013, the Bitcoin exchange company that we were dealing with notified me that they couldn't find my registration number, and that was in November of 2013. And so I went and looked, and sure enough, I couldn't find anything about my registration either. So I registered again, went through the whole process. And this time, for whatever reason, it got saved. They sent me a registration number, and I thought everything's fine.
So that registration was the federal level, and
yes,
the state level
is the license. When the federal government calls you an unlicensed money service business, they mean both things. I didn't find out that they meant both things until much later in the process. At the what was called the change of plea hearing, I pled guilty to being an unlicensed money service business. And at that time, I was under the impression, and so was my attorney, because he's the one that advised me of this, was that because I didn't have a license, I was an unlicensed money service business. Well, so I went ahead and pled guilty, and after that, it bothered me a lot because I knew I had no intent of being an unlicensed money service business. I thought I'd complied. So I went and read the regulations again, and I said, I can't be wrong. This isn't that obscure. Even though financial laws can be very complex, this seemed to be very clear to me. So I contacted the Office of Financial Institutions in Baton Rouge. That's the agency that regulates money service businesses. And I asked them point blank, here's what I'm doing. Do I have to have a license? They said, no, you're correct. You don't have to have a license because Bitcoin is not a currency. It doesn't meet the statute. Therefore, it's not regulated under a license. I gave that information to my attorney. He immediately wrote up a plea to withdraw my guilty plea. We sent it to the court, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and finally we got an answer from them, and they said, no, we're not going to let you withdraw your plea. it would be inconvenient to the court to have to go to trial with this. So after that, we went through sentencing, and the judge was very apparent that he was trying to give us the harshest sentence possible. He would add up every single point that he could to make sure we got the maximum prison time, and here we are. I'm only like 4 days away from having to report to the federal penitentiary. What
happens on Thursday?
I have a choice of one or two things. Either I can transport myself to the federal penitentiary in Atlanta, Georgia, which is 600 miles away, on my own, or I can turn myself into the marshal's office here in this building. If I do that, they will then place me in either the Caddo Correctional Institute or the Bossier Parish Jail. And I'll have to sit there for about a month until they arrange transportation to move me to the penitentiary in Atlanta.
Both are horrible options.
Yes, they are.
We both know that this is the prison capital of the world.
Yes.
Prison state of the nation.
Right.
And so all the time we're hearing about the revolving door. Criminals are only serving a portion of their time that they were issued.
Right.
Is that the case in your...
Well, no. I may not have to serve all 46 months, but in the federal system, they make you serve a minimum of 85% of the original sentence. So instead of serving almost 4 years, it may be 3 1/4 years that I have to serve, which is just insane for something that involved no victims. All my customers were happy, nobody got hurt. The only thing that happened was my registration didn't get saved on the FinCEN website when I tried to register it. And so for that, I have to go to prison for nearly 4 years. That's absolutely insane.
So let's zoom out a little bit.
All right.
You know, the old saying, the more numerous the laws, the more corrupt the state.
Yeah.
This, unfortunately, is a very direct impact example. Let's talk about how far off the rails the federal government is.
It's incredibly far off the rails. And anytime you allow a federal government or a government to redefine the terms and the meanings of the words in their contract, then you've allowed that government to have unlimited power, because they can make it say anything they want it to. And that's what's happened here. The laws regarding financial institutions was originally written by Congress, but in this case, a federal agency of the executive department, not the legislative department, has decided what the law means, and they have expanded on the meaning of what a money service business is to include people like me. And they're just expanding their powers more and more until your liberties mean absolutely nothing.
That expansion of power has been a slow crawl, bit by bit, and they, take over this small part, this other small part. Your case in particular is almost one of those small step forwards of the power grab. Talk to me about what the leap that they're making.
Well, the leap that they're making is that they're redefining what a money service business is, and also what currency is. According to their own regulations, Bitcoin is not a currency. The IRS considers it to be a property, the Commodities and Exchange Board considers it to be a commodity, but no government agency considers it to be a currency, because even though it acts like a currency somewhat, it doesn't have all the criteria of being a currency. Maybe the mistake I made was I didn't get an attorney involved when I first started the business. I thought I could read the law and understand it, and it was very clear to me what I could and couldn't do. Apparently that wasn't good enough. Because they have expanded their meaning of what those statutes are to include anything they want it to be, I don't think that even an attorney can really protect you. They're going to just do what they want to do. So all I can say is be careful. It's apparent to me that the judge is afraid of things like Bitcoin, of virtual currencies, of not being able to track people and their activities, is one of the reasons I got such a harsh sentence. federal government wants to go after people who are involved in anything that thwarts their efforts to spy on you without a warrant. And that's really what this case is about more than anything. They're afraid of a jury hearing about how they've treated me regarding the licensing issue. Because I think most people would say, if there is no license, how can you charge someone with being an unlicensed money service business? And also, the very definition of what a money service business is one of those things that's so vague and broad, it can mean anything the government wants it to mean. So, you know, I don't think most people would be for giving the government that much power to use it in any way they want to, and to use it against people whenever the government doesn't like what you're doing. And I think that's one of the most important points that I've learned about this case.